Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're in Masechtas Nedarim Daf Tes. We are going to begin on the very top of Testament Aleph by the Mishnah. Kinidrei Rishayim. If a person says that I want to make a neder just like that of the wicked, in that situation, nadar, benazir uvekarbon uveshvua. Then in all these situations, it will be a good neder. Says Rashi, for example, let's say you have bread in front of you, kinidre rishayim mashma, deoiso kikar yehe olav kinid rishayim, that this bread should be upon me just like the neder of a wicked person, that they restricted something on themselves, so too I'm going to restrict this bread on myself. Nadar benazir v'karbon v'shvua. It's considered to be a neder. V'im achlu, if you ate that bread, machayev nazirus, machayev nazirus v'karbon u'shvua, the chayev nami karbon shvua. The dark and shorashayim who shenoidrin b'nazirus v'karbon v'nishboyin. That when it comes to rishayim, they are not very particular of what they say. They're not careful what comes out of their mouth, and therefore for that reason, it will actually work because that is how a Rasha acts. And therefore, just like a Rasha typically will aser things, so too this bread will be aser. On this, the Ran says, De'im omer kinidri rishayim hareini v'haya nazir oiver lefanav. It happens to be that there is a nazir passing by. Harehu nazir. V'cheinim omer kinidri rishayim olai. If not only you say hareini, but you say also olai upon me, chayev carbon. In that situation, you're going to be chayev to bring a carbon. Umastabra nami dedavke k'shahisa behema munachas lefanav. He says it's probably in a situation where you have the actual animal that is directly in front of you. Okay. However, says the Mishnah, if you make the decoration and say kinidri kasherim, then lo amar klum. Why? So the Ran says, Afakav Diamar Hareini Olai, even if you said Hareini and Olai, Himenu, which sounds like you're saying everything right, Bahayan Nazir o Behema o Kikro Fanav, you either have this Nazir, or the animal for the carbon, or this bread in front of you, Lomer Klum. Why? Says the Ran, Shahari Ein Haksherim Neidrin, She'ein Rishayim Lasos Kain. They're not allowed to just simply do that, and therefore, because of that, the din is that it will not work because a kosher will not make nedarim. Now the Ran also says dinami im or kinidvas rishayim, that you want to be able to ask yourself just like a wicked person brings something as a nedava, which is not because they're forced to, but because it's a free will. Lo omer klum lafish in rishayim noidvin. They don't give nedavas. Shim heim noidvin in rishayim. Then they're not really considered to be Rishayim regarding that matter. Okay. So he said, again, in that situation, if you say Kinidri Kasherim, then you didn't say anything. Because a kosher doesn't make a neder. Now let's go back into the Mishnah. Kinid Vaisam Nader Benazir V'Karbon. So if you say Kinid Vaisam, so that's referring to Ksherim. That's why I said, if it's someone who is a Rasha, and you say kinid voisam, then it will not work. Says the Ran, that when it comes to a nedava of a kosher, shahari akshem misnadvin heim bekarbon nizirus, they do nedavos. Hilkach ki amar hareini v'haya nazir oivel lefanav. If you said hareini and the nazir is passing in front of you, harihu nazir, then it works. Now that's only when it comes to a nedava. Skipping 2 lines, avol b'shvua, says the Ran, lo machayev. If you made a shvua based on that, you will not be chayev. If you have the bread in front of you, then I'm not going to eat it. Because when it comes to a kosher, they do not make shvuos. So they're not going to make an oath like that. The only thing that a kosher will do is a nedava. They're not going to make a neder either. They're only going to make a nedava. So therefore, when it comes to a kosher, if you say nedava, then it works. When it comes to a Rasha, if you say neder, it works. Now, we have to understand what's the difference between a neder and a nedava. So the Ran says, "V'ikla meidak hari Nadava enu ela b'omer hari zu v'neder b'hari alai. Okay, skipping a few lines. The neder who hari alai. When you make a neder, 3 letters, it's alai, which is also 3 letters. That you're saying it's upon me. That's something in which a kasher will not do. Because you're not giving completely. Because you're not separating it now. There's no animal in front of you. Because you're not saying this particular animal, it's upon me, which means it's not a true nadava, because a person doesn't have this in front of them. Nadava hu be'omer harizu. The fact that it's right here in front of you, that shows it's something which is more willing, that you have more of a desire to give. So that's the significant difference, that a kosher is more willing when it comes to the nadava. That is considered to be more of a true gift, because you're doing it right away, as opposed to like procrastinating, which is a neder saying, oh, I'll do it, but you didn't specify which animal it is. Okay, so that's like the basic chiluk that the Ran says. So now the Gemara wonders, V'dilma hachikarmer. Maybe this is what the Mishnah means. Kinidre rishayim lo nadarna. Just like rishayim that make a neder, I don't want to make a neder. Maybe that's what it means. That's what it means. So Amar Shmuel b'oimer kinidre rishayim hareini olai v'himenu. You made this declaration that I want it to be just like the neder of a rasha, and it should be upon me and from it. Hareinim naziras olai b'karban himenu b'shvua. So in those situations, because you said it that way, it's clear your intention is to make a neder. Says the Ran, Bafil hachi davka ki kaimer kinidre rishayim hareini. The only time it's going to actually work, it's going to be chal, is if you say kinidre rishayim hareini. Avol ki omer hareini l'chudei. If all you did was say hareini, then lo omer klum. Just hareini is not enough. Delo dami lo omer ahei. It's not comparable to when you say ahei. The amrinim in parakam de kedushin the havilei nazir. Kisha nazir ovel afanav mishum de ahei lishta malya umahani. So the Gemara over there says that if you just say ahei when this nazir passes in front of you, that is enough that you become a nazir. However, if you would say hareini, that's not enough. Abel hareini I lav di omer kinidre rishayim. If all you have to say is ahei, that's enough. But if you said hareini, then you also have to say kinidre rishayim. Olai. If you don't say that lul mashma di omer midi, it's not muchach, you said anything. Kach perusha rabboisa ve'enu nira be'enai de hareini lo gora hey. He says that no, the truth is, which is we see it's a machlokas rishayim, that the word ahei should not be any different than hareini. And therefore, if ahei works, then hareini should work, and you shouldn't have to say all this other stuff afterwards. Question 5. There's the only question that's on this test. Haya nazar on this daf. Haya nazar olafanav v'yomer ahei on hareini only himahani medin yad. Is that enough of a yad? So ahei we say is mahani because that's the Gemara in Kedushin says, but farish. Hareini is a machlokas rishayim. Okay. All right. So with that said, let us continue with the Gemara. So the Gemara says as follows. So hareini nazirus dilma hareini, but so he said hareini. That doesn't necessarily mean anything. Hareini nazirus olai b'karban himenu b'shvua, because you didn't just say hareini. The Gemara says that you also said b'omer kinidre rishayim hareini olai himenu. You said everything you can possibly say all coupled together. That's why certainly it works. Because again, Rishayim do make Nedarim. Harein Nazirus, so he's saying it's definitely Nazirus. Dilma Harein B'Tainis Kaimer. Maybe he's just saying that he wants to accept upon himself a fast, and that's it. Amar Shmuel Kashahay Nazir over Lefanav. You have a nazir passing right in front of you. So obviously it's not about a fast. You have to look at the context. You have context clues. And the fact that this nazir is walking by him, obviously that's what he's referring to. Like carbon himenu b'shvua dilma himenu de'achilna kaimer. Maybe it's just talking about the obligation of eating. Dilma himenu dekachil kamer, says the Ran. Kolomer b'kivan deikol meimer dilma dechilna kamer. He's just talking about eating. Havilhu yadayim shen mochichos. It's not clear what he means. It was fair l'shmol doli having yadayim. So therefore, we should say we'll have yadayim. It shouldn't mean anything. Gemara says, Dilma heimenu deachilna kamer. I said that again. So Rabbi deomer heimenu shlo oichal. He said beferish that I'm not going to eat it. So yihachi malomer. What's the chiddush? So madatema holu mapik shvua mipume kamashwan hadain. So even though he didn't actually say the word shvua, nonetheless, it's still considered to be a lashon of a shvua. Fine. Kenidre kasherim loemer klum. Kenidvaisam nadar v'chul. So mantan de nishanale bein nedel and nadava. So who makes this distinction between the neder and the nadava? As we said, when it comes to a kosher, if you say a lashon nadava, so that's something that does work because it's something which is immediate. The Ran says, but the neder, which is just a lie upon myself, but I'll eventually bring the animal, that's not something which a kosher would do. So lema lo Rameir, lo Rabbi Huda, lo Chayra. This concept of making a chiluk, that sometimes it's actually good because a kosher does the right thing, that he will actually make a nadava. Maybe that's not like Rabbi Meir or Rabbi Huda. How do we see that? That's lo Rabbi Meir Rabbi Huda. That's Tanya. The pasuk says Tov asher lo sidor the gomer. Tam mizeh mizeh shein another koliker. Dim Rameir. Rameir says it's better that a person doesn't make a neder at all. Even better than a person who will make a neder and pay and fulfill his neder. It's better to not have done it at all. Says the Ran, Minoider Mishalim, Minoider in mishalim. So he says time is fine. Taiv mizeh mizeh shein another kol ikr. So I'll take a Rabbi Huda. Rabbi Huda Omer, Taiv mizeh mizeh noider mishalim. So okay, actually I do need to look in the Ran for this. So the first opinion actually is like this: Minoider mishalim. Better is making a shvua, making a neder and paying, than not making a neder and not paying. Than making a neder and not paying. Obviously, making a neder and not paying is the worst. The question is it better to make a neder and pay, or is it better to make a not to make a neder at all? So you skip a couple lines in the Ran. Shema tishkach. Maybe it's better not to make a neder because you may end up forgetting and not paying. So as I said, according to this opinion, better you don't make a neder at all. Mashmalon, hashtadeloy shani bein nedel and adava, dilu ashmein and kra the toiv mikulan nodim mishalim. The pasuk doesn't make a distinction between the neder and the dava, so it shouldn't make any difference. And then Rabbi Huda says no, toiv mizeh mizeh nodim mishalim. So the Darshal, who says the Ran, he darshans the pasuk like this: Eis asher sidor shalim, v'zuhi midu mishubachas. This is a praiseworthy thing. Avol toiv asher lo sidor mishetidor v'lo mishalim. It's better than making a neder not paying. V'iteim a pshita. It's obvious, right? So it's better to pay, to make a neder and pay, than to make a neder and not pay. So lo tehei saved shemashas nidcha ata meisav zchus. You shouldn't think that the time of your neder you're going to add a zchus v'achachach, and then afterwards im shachachta or nesavta lo hisarata. If you forget you didn't lose out, as sacharcha your reward sheinu kain shein haschar b'shas haneder el b'shas hatashlumen kach nira shita zeis be'enai. That the reward is not doing the neder, but it's fulfilling the neder. It's not saying I'm making a neder, but it's actually carrying through. It's not just the words, but it's actually following through. It's easy to talk the talk, but walking the walk is more chashuv. Anyway, the point is, as Ran points out here, we don't seem to make any distinction between the neder and the dava when it comes to this machlokas. So Afil Tamer Rab Meir says the Gemara in Testament Bays, maybe this could also be like Rab Meir, who could maybe make a difference between the neder and the dava. Kikam Rab Meir ben neder. The only time he said this is by neder. Says Rashi, Aser b'lashain Nedarim dafka kaimer, because the pasuk does say the word neder. So maybe the only time he says that better not to do this at all is only by a neder. However, ben nedava like karmer. However, when it comes to a nedava, maybe not. and says the Rashi, because it says when it comes to a kosher, they will do an adava. So maybe when it's better not to do anything, that's by neder, but by nadav it is good, and therefore maybe that is like Reb Meir. Abahokatani kinidvaisam nadar ben nazir v'karban. It says the language nadar, so you can't tell me there's a distinction between a nadav and a neder when it's mentioned neder. So tani nadav ben nazir v'karban. So ma'ishna noider dulo. Why when it comes to a neder it's not good? Because dilma asi boli de takala. Because since it's not in front of you, there's a good chance you may be asli de takala. You may not end up doing it. So nadav nami lo dilma asi boli de takala. So it's the same problem. So you have this animal directly in front of you. Okay, so you're closer to bringing it to the base of mikdash as a carbon, but you didn't do it yet. So maybe you're going to asli de takala, you still won't bring it. So your answer is, we're not concerned when it comes to a nadava. Why not? Because kehillel hazakin, the Sanya Omer al Hillel zakin, it said regarding Hillel, shalom moel adam ba'olaso kol yamav, that he no person had violated me'ila in his lifetime, that no one ended up misusing hektish. Why? Because mevia kashichulin la'azara makdisha v'saimach aleha b'shoichata. What he would do is he would bring this animal before it was designated, and this way it would never happen that maybe something would happen in the interim by the time you were sanctified it to the time you were actually brought it as a carbon. So what he did, he waited all the way until the last moment to be makdashit. So therefore there was no concern of being asli de takala. And therefore you could do that when it comes to a nadava regarding this animal. So hanicha, nadava, that's possible by nadava. To karbanos, when it comes to karbanos, nadava de naziris mayu kamemar. How about when it comes to a nazir, a nadava for naziris? You can't say in that situation you're going to wait to the last second. So let's look in the Ran first of all. Kehil hazakin im omer al behema hamunachas ba'azara. If you say, what you say is regarding the animal that's at the azara, that's kenidvas ksherim nadar, but carbon, it's like the nadava of a kosher. Then in that situation, that it's considered to be a neder. Shahar ksherim avian behemton lazara umakdishin oisa kader shahayin noihil zakin, because that's what ksherim did. So therefore, what you basically do is you say, I am going to end up bringing this. I am going to make a neder. I'm going to make this vow just like the ksherim do regarding this animal, in which it's impossible asli de takala in that situation. Okay, so that's only going to come to nadava by nazirus, by a carbon. How about when it comes to nazirus? Says the Ran, Kaloimer heich ksherim misnadvin nazirus v'ha'islahu l'mechash dilma asli de takala. There's still the potential of asli de takala in that situation by a nazir. So several look at Shimon HaTzadik, the Sanya. Omer Shimon HaTzadik. So Shimon HaTzadik, who is the Kohen Gadol, who was actually in the dreams of Alexander the Great, as the Gemara says, Miyomai huachalti ashim nazir tameh. Shimon HaTzadik said, I never ate from the carbon of an ashim nazir, of a guilt offering of a nazir, who was tameh. I never did such a thing. However, echad pam, el echad, only one. Because pam achas ba adam echad. One time there was one person came, nazir min hadaroim. He was a nazir literally from the south. Re'isiv shehu yafe naim v'tov roi. He was a beautiful person. He was very handsome. And ukutsaitsav seduroislo, and the locks of his hair were beautifully arranged. He had the most spectacular mane of hair. There were taltalim, they were curly and a beautiful head of hair. Amartilo, I said, B'ni, ma re'isa l'hashchis sarcha ze hanoeh. Why are you cutting your hair? You have such beautiful hair. Why would you cut it? So Amarli, so this person said, Roya hi'isi l'abba bi'iri. So I was a shepherd for my father in a city. Halachdi lamalis mayim min hamayin, and I went to draw water from a well. V'nistakalti bivua shali, and I was able to see through the water a shadow of what I actually looked like. I was able to see my reflection in the water. Ufachaz ola yitzri, and all of a sudden my yetzer hara got the best of me. Ubikish l'tardeni min oilam, and it wanted to basically destroy me and cause me to sin and to use my beautiful physical appearance for the wrong thing. So Martilo, I said, Russia, and I said to him, as he was speaking to himself about his yetzer hara, you wicked one, lama atad mizgoya ba'olam she'ena shelcha. How could you be so haughty in a world that's not yours? You're beautiful now, but that beauty will not last. Eventually, when a person dies, they're going to be placed in the earth, and that beauty will only be temporary. I swear, that I'm going to shave my hair off for the sake of heaven. Miyad amadati. So Shimon HaTzadik stood up when the shaktiv al roisho and kissed him on his head. Amarti lo b'ni kamoicha yirbu noizri naziris b'Yisrael. There should be many naziris just like you. Olecha hakasav oimer. And upon you, the pasuk says, Ish kiafli linder neder nazir lahazir lahashem. That this person clearly designated himself for Hashem. It says Rashi, Lazir lahashem shenazir rasul l'shem shemayim. He became a nazir for the best of reasons, for the most sincere, perfect reasons. Now, what was exactly the whole problem over here? So the Ran says, several of Haki Pirusha the Chol Shenadar Mitoich Inyan Zeh Kol Kach Kavanasa Ritsuya. This is so beautiful. The Lake Lamecha Shalava Takala. That will not come Asila Takala. In other words, if you do something l'shem shemayim, you're not going to falter. You're not going to fall. So you don't have to worry. But normally he was concerned when a person brought a carbon. Says the Ran on Ashim Nazir Tameh shehiskil limnais v'nitma b'meis. He became Tameh even though he was a Nazir shesaisim inyano, which causes him to have to start his count over, or maybe carbon or moina kavatchila. So that's a big problem, because it obviously shows that he didn't take his Nazir very seriously. So therefore, he didn't really want to partake of this carbon, this asham. Okay, so before we see maskiv, let's look at question, TB15. Oh, I actually got this one right. So what was the carbon that Shimon HaTzadik refrained from partaking, that he did not want to eat, and why not? What was the whole problem? So this is how he writes it. Carbon ashim nazir tameh. Now the Rush actually says v'chein kol karban nasav shelvi l'sov naziruso kishiyitar. Anytime a nazir, he was always concerned, says the Rush, of any nazir, that he wouldn't eat of any of their karbanos. Even if you remain pure the entire time, he was concerned over their sanctity. Zesh sir atzma v'chol davar. So what's the problem? He may actually feel bad that he became a nazir because all these extra days now. It's comparable to bringing chum zara, and therefore that was the concern. Because again, as the Ran said, maybe carbon so that became obviously something quite problematic to him. Now the Rush, let's see what the Rush says over here. Kol Hashamois Nami. Let's see that. If I can find this, Mavin Chulin Bazara, Labdavka Chulin Bazara. Okay. So the Ran says, Kimli Shul Nischaret Baharech Yimetu Masai. So the question is, if this guy, Avol Zesh Tzadik Gomor, who Kimle Be Shalonis Charet Baharech Yemei Tumaso. So it's very clear from the Rush that says the issue is because you're going to have Charata. So therefore, that was the issue. But this guy who's at Tzadi Gomer, you don't have to worry about such a thing. Okay. Fine. So now the Gemara continues. Maskevla Rebbe Mani Maishna Ashim Nazir Tameh. How come when it came to an Ashim Nazir Tameh, Doi Achel, that Shimon Tzadik says no, I'm not gonna eat that because the Asi Al Chet. L'char is because it came through a sin because the guy became Tameh when he shouldn't have been Tameh. He's not to become Tameh Mace. So Kol Hashamis Nami Lo Yochel the Al Chet Asu. For that same reason, he shouldn't eat any Asham because an Asham is a guilt offering. So therefore, Shimon Tzadik shouldn't have partaken from any Asham. Armalei Rav Yoina Hainu Taima Kishehein Toihin Noizrin, that when they regret their Naziris, or Kishein Matamin, which is the Rosh says this is the Gemara actually, when they became Tameh, Maravan Alehin Yemei Naziris, and all of a sudden there's more days of being a Nazir. Mischartin Behen Venimsum Avin Tchul Azara. He'll end up bringing chulin to a zar, which will have dafka, but it looks like it. Yihachi feel nazar taminami. L'chayra should be the same issue. You shouldn't eat from a nazar tahar. So nazar tahar lo de amude omid navshe diachal lindor, because he assessed himself. He said, for this period of time, stam nazir shloshim yom, I could I can handle this. But once you became Tameh, all of a sudden you have another new, it's tacked on all over again, so that element of Charata may kick in, and therefore because of that, we say that he said, I'm not going to eat from such a carb. Okay, so it's interesting how the Rush says all karbanos, but again, explicitly it seems pretty fairish that it's talking specifically about a Nazar Tameh. Okay, we're going to stop there, but let's see TA 14. Tov asher lo sidor tov mizeh sheino neider kolikar masvara ulokash deshari rameir ben adava yosem min neder. So it says like this: a nadava is marutza tfei, is what I wrote. Since you are saying zu, you already picked the animal, which is a chashuv action. Mash'enkin and neder, you only say olai, but haven't made a strong commitment to designate a behema yet, so it's not as impressive. Adkan.